Antietam, when musket balls tore through his chest and neck, missing heart, spine, and carotid artery by an eighth of an inch. He had spoken to Grant and shaken hands with Meade at the Battle of Spotsylvania, and seen Lincoln dodge enemy fire at Fort Stevens during Jubal Early's raid on Washington. As a boy, he knew Ralph Waldo Emerson as a family friend and dimly remembered Herman Melville, a summer neighbor, as a rather gruff, taciturn man. Traveling Europe after the war, he climbed the Alps with Leslie Stephen, better known to later generations as the father of Virginia Woolf. While in law school, he became fast friends with Henry James and his brother William, soon to become, respectively, the novelist and philosopher of their generation. To Holmes, they were Harry and Bill. On visits to England, he met the young Winston Churchill and the old Anthony Trollope. In Washington, Bertrand Russell stopped by more than once to talk philosophy. A quiz show in the 1960s posed the question, which American met during his lifetime both John Quincy Adams and Alger Hiss? The answer, of course, was Holmes, who had met the 6th President of the United States, another family friend of his Boston boyhood, when he was 5 years old, and who had employed the future Soviet spy as one of his last law secretaries in 1929. But it was the Civil War that was his touchstone. "I hate to read about those days," he told friends. He had no interest in reliving the war's squalid preliminaries or the blunders and worse of its battles. When a cousin sent him the British writer Lord Charnwood's biography of Lincoln, he felt obliged to tackle it, but halfway through confessed, "I should praise God if I had finished the book, or someone stole it." Yet he was keenly alive to the war's lasting meaning for him, the profound way those terrible and ennobling experiences of youth had shaped his life. A drive to Fort Stevens was always part of the program for out-of-town visitors and for each year's new secretary. He marked each anniversary of his brushes with death by solemnly drinking a glass of wine to the living and the dead, and never failed, when writing a letter or postcard to a friend around those dates, to note the occasion. 1908. The anniversary of Antietam, where 1862, 46 years ago, I was shot through the neck. If the war destroyed forever the idealism and optimism of the world of his boyhood, the naive Boston Unitarian faith in the inevitable triumph of moral virtue, guided only by education and man's innate rationality, it had substituted a profound lesson in the practical courage of everyday life. The men who have been soaked in a sea of death and who somehow have survived have got something from it which has transfigured their world, he said in a speech to the veterans of his old Army Corps the year he arrived in Washington to take his place on the Supreme Court. They know the passion and irony of life. He had no illusion of the role that chance had played in determining who survived and who did not. "It almost humiliates me to think of my luck," he remarked years later. But he keenly felt his good fortune not only in emerging with his skin intact, but in having had the chance to learn at an early age that, for most things in this world, half their terrors vanish when you walk up and tackle them. Once you lay hold of the lion's skin, it comes off, and the same old donkey is underneath. Or, as he summarized his philosophy of life and work as he approached his 90th year, "My old formula is that a man should be an enthusiast in the front of his head and a skeptic in the back. Do his damnedest without believing that the cosmos would collapse if he failed. One should have the same courage for failure that many have for death." If all else failed, one could be a good soldier, he insisted. He thought it simply bad form to parade one's fears or give way to prophesying evil or drumming on the void, like his over-refined Boston intellectual friends Henry and Brooks Adams. To file in and do your damnedest remains now, as heretofore, the only solution, to my mind. It was the only way to real happiness. It was also more likely to do some actual good for the world than more self-conscious striving at altruistic ends. In Washington,